ديانا، أنتظر أم أبدأ؟
Diana, should I wait or should I start? Hala Murad is asking.
No, Hala, I said that we can start. I was just handing it over to you.
Yes.
For you
شكرا
to start.
جزيلا ديانا. شكرا
Thank you very
لكم.
much, Diana. Thank you to all of you. I would like to welcome you all for during this fourth session in our sessions for the justice, for climate justice that we are holding with our partners. My name is Hala Murad from Debin, the organization for the land. We are working in the MENA region. We are working in different places where there are countries member to HIC. I would like to welcome you all, and I want to tell you that today we are going to be talking about the roadmap for the advocacy for the issues of climate justice. This session is going to be recorded because we have 4 different languages, and we have actually the chance to use any language we have. You can see this icon where you can click and choose the language that you would like to listen to: Arabic, English, French, or Spanish. Please feel free to choose the language you're more comfortable with. Today is the 4th day. We had 3 sessions before. They were attended through different regions from Africa, from North Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, from Europe. Also, this was allowed in different areas. You can see this chart that tells you that we were able to have 19% of our audience from Africa, from Latin America, 7, from North Africa, North America 7.7, Latin America 50%, Africa 19.2% of those who attended our previous sessions. In fact, the countries that participated, as you can see, we have Hungary, the UK, Mali, Tunisia, Cameroon, Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Senegal, Kenya, and we have also from North America, some from Canada. We had in MENA, Egypt, Yemen, Jordan, Palestine, and Sudan, and from Latin America, we had some people from Argentina, Ecuador, Salvador, and Bolivia, as well as Brasilia. This is to tell you about the participants. We are always happy to have you with us. We are always happy to read your comments on the chat box. We are also going to listen to you. We will give you the chance to be with us, to tell us your ideas and your comments. There are different ways, like the Google Classroom. Write on the chat box in whatever language you like. This is going to help us and help you so that we can get your messages in a good way. Through the previous sessions, we had excellent speakers and they covered very important topics. And in fact, we started gradually with, for example, defining and redefining the climate justice. And we talked about a roadmap for advocacy. The team took almost 8 preparatory sessions in order to prepare for this. In fact, these were like guidelines to learn from. What we have today is the result of the good work of an integrated team from HIC and other also alliances and other networks. Let me say that in session 1, we were able to cover very important topics when we talk about the Anthropocene. for the humans, and how this has made man change from capital way of living or to a capital way of living, and this has created some problems. In fact, we also talked about the principles of climate justice, how we should think about it as social networks. This is going to lead us to have justice and establish justice, and also have equality, how we can recognize actually some economic and social participation. This is something that we can say all countries should share the responsibility to achieve. We have some consumption culture. This has led to what we have today. We also talked about the fact that we have to include climate justice in the agendas, different ones. In the session, the second session, we talked about the legal policy and the human rights frameworks of climate justice. So it was from that framework, where are these climate justice principles in the human rights frameworks? How they are related. We talked about the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, like in the Declaration of 2021. We also talked about the advocacy plans of HIC. We also talked about how we can provide resources in order to be able to tackle this problem of environment as well as climate justice. We also talked about where we are now, where we are, and we need some stories with what is happening in our lives. We talked about the refugees and the land and different aspects. When we put this in the agenda and add it to the agenda of climate justice, this is going to give us a vision about the whole topic. In session 3, which was held last Thursday, we talked about different struggles in different areas, such struggles which were concentrating on achieving climate justice and how they strengthen each other, how this can be done. And what else can we do at the international level? We are talking about decision making. How can we work at the level of financing or revenues or capabilities, building of capabilities? And we also talked about the CSOs, the NGOs, and that the fact that we have to work at different levels, regional, national, and international. The agenda should include working according to the climate justice agenda. And we also talked about where is the citizen here, and where are our points of strength and points of weaknesses. We also talked, about having a road that is clear towards justice. And what else we need. This is what we talked about in a nutshell in these 3 sessions. In fact, there was a lot of interactive from the speakers, from the HIC, from the participants. As for today's session, it is a session that we have been looking forward since session 1. It is about the advocacy work. I'm so passionate about it. We will talk more about how in our work, how when we are advocating for this issue, how we have an advocacy strategy, but what do we need by different spaces for advocacy based on the long history of struggle. When we talk about struggle, we were talking about so many years of struggling. we talk about a vision that is very clear when it comes to climate justice, how we can enhance climate justice, how can we advance the climate justice and creating a cross-regional advocacy agenda and building on outcomes of previous sessions, how we can talk about the finances and how the finance, when it comes out of out of different countries, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to use it? In order to achieve our target. I don't want to take much more time, but of this session, I'm going to give the floor now to Emmanuel, one of our facilitators, and he will be talking to you about this session. And I hope that we will continue our session in such passion in order to have a good advocacy agenda. Emmanuel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hala. I think you have done very great. Great work indeed. Yeah, so as Hala has already talked about the session's objective, I think it's important to pluralize some of the advocacy work targeting the processes looking at advocacy strategies. But I want to throw some questions to you. So this is our synchronous response that we want to hear from you. So what is your demand for COP28? As you are aware, there is a COP28 that is coming in November. So what are these demands that you have from COP28? That is question number one. So question number two is what is your ask of HIC on climate justice and advocacy? And what you are looking at are what we want you to do is on the chat box, please give your responses on what is your demand for COP28. Write them and send them in your chat box, as well as what is your ask for the climate justice advocacy strategy. Please send those to your chat box so that we can begin a conversation. Yeah, we want to have this conversation by looking at issues to activate the loss and damage fund, advocate for radical transformation of our energy system, or is it a stronger negotiation position in international climate agreements? Knowledge of our equitable responsibility in addressing the climate crisis, also building resilience to climate impacts, needs of the people and the host vulnerable communities should be given a centrality, looking at climate policies, priorities, their protection, as well as addressing systematic injustices that have contributed to their vulnerability. So what are these asks from your end? Whereas from HIC climate justice advocacy strategy we want to also hear from you in terms of advancing climate justice through the lens of human rights and habitat along the following lines. Number one is looking at a strengthening network, advocating for common causes, and also issues to influence policies. So things around that, and the influencing policies will be looking at the right to connect housing and habitat, which is a very key component in terms of. So again, just to repeat one more time, is what are these demands that you have? And to take us home, I want to bring in Dr. Patricia. Dr. Patricia is, I want to bring three speakers who are going to speak to us today. These three speakers, we have Dr. Patricia, we'll hear from Hala Barakat, and also our HIC President, Alain Adrian. But at this juncture, allow me to introduce our speaker, Patricia. Patricia is the global lead of the Women Environment Program, WEP, regional women focus organization, which with headquarters. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about this.
Humphrey, I
Yes,
can assist.
yes.
I can assist.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. So Patricia Miranda is the coordinator of environment and economic and social rights working group. She's the youngest young indigenous feminist with the 14-year experience of contribution to the collective struggles of indigenous and feminist movements. From the local to global level, Patricia has a co-designed feminist participatory action research, that is FPAR, with rural and indigenous women, and coordinated global campaigns of indigenous people's rights and rights to land and self-determination. She holds a bachelor degree in criminal law, but more importantly, it's a product of political resistance of our own community in Indonesia. So Patricia will speak on the topic of identifying the existing advocacy spaces based on the long history of the struggle of civil society organization and HIC members, and advocacy opportunities in justice and climate issues, and their intersection with habitat. And Patricia, you will have 15 minutes to take us through this. And as Diana already said, this is going to be a very interactive session with a panel presentation. So, Dr. Patricia, I want to over to you. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you so much, but I think we need some assistance to mute some of the participants so that I can be audible, I guess. Okay. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for having me here. I'm really, really glad to see there is timer, because I have my own timer on my phone just to make sure that I'm really within time. Yeah, I think hearing what Hala was sharing, Hala Murad was sharing on the summary of what the sessions have been really about, I feel that there have been so much rich sessions, and I have been reviewing them also in the YouTube channel of HIC. There are a number of things that were already talked about. That is, what is climate justice? What are the legal framework, policy framework? And then also I've heard that there were already stories shared among climate justice movements in terms of what are the common struggles and challenges. I feel that all of these topics that have been talked about really are not isolated from a lot of mechanisms, be it at the national level, at the regional level, at the international levels, when we are talking about climate crisis. Now my topic is about identifying existing advocacy spaces, but also advocacy opportunities as we demand climate justice. For me, advocacy spaces are there. They are very, very, it is clear what are there. For many of us who have been in the movements for such a long time, for example, the Conference of Party, we were just talking about the COP that will be coming up, COP28 as a space. I see that there was some sharing also about that. And that is one of the examples at the global levels, and there are a lot of other COP and biodiversity, CBD COP and many things. And then aside from the issues of climate justice, we also have the interrelations of the climate justice with sustainable development goals. Then we have the high level political forum on sustainable development goals. And all the trickling down mechanisms at the regional and the national levels. This is to really say that we have countless of campaign and advocacy spaces, especially given the nature of the climate crisis, climate change as a very intersecting issue. I think the issue that I really want to put forward and want to emphasize is that what have been the continuous struggles is not the limited advocacy spaces that are available, but the limited opportunities and access of the grassroots communities of the civil societies into those spaces. So that is something that I want to share to open this conversation. And I feel when we are going into a lot of these spaces, what would be very important, what would be really our weapons, as I would call it, is our common demands, our political demands, and structural analysis on the narratives of the issues. We have our counter narratives, we have our stories that we will bring there. We have the analysis as HIC and its members, collective analysis that should be, I think, going into those spaces. So I want to focus on those issues, some of those issues. What are the common agenda that we could bring into those spaces? For now, I have five main points that I want to share, but I want to start with how much, when we are talking about what is climate justice, we redefine and defining climate justice. We understand that there is climate injustices going on that is really rooted in social injustices, gender injustices. And then there is a solution that is being offered to tackle climate injustices. But then what is happening, and this is something that I feel can be really as a foundation of our structural analysis, is how we can identify false climate solutions and then really promoting human rights-based climate actions, because that is one thing that I feel when we are going into different advocacy spaces, really as a pillar for us. What we are seeing here, what I want to say here is really how climate actions and solutions that are being offered must not harm communities and pave the way for further human rights violations. And therefore, as part of HIC and beyond, as part of this climate movement, it is really imperative, be it we are going to COP, whether we are going to intersessionals, whether we are also advocating for the nationally determined contributions, and this is at the national level, we really need to see the importance to advocate for meaningful climate solutions. And that should be underpinned by the state's obligations to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights, be it the rights to healthy environment, be it indigenous peoples' collective rights to their lands, territories, and resources, the rights to biodiversity, to self-determination, to free, prior, informed consent. I think this is very important because there are a lot of reports already being issued where many climate mitigation and adaptation project interventions are harming communities on the ground. Now we're talking about the false solutions as really part of the core of climate injustices. If we are pulling this, we see really the root causes of climate crisis, and this has been reported and by so many parties, by the IPCC, by so many of us here know that there is an urgency to really have a swift, just, and equitable phase out of fossil fuel and an end to corporate captures. we go to many global negotiation spaces. We go to many negotiation spaces. What we see there, for example, at COP, be it COP in Glasgow and then COP in Egypt and then now COP in Dubai, we see the increasing domination of the fossil fuel industry, the very polluters, in spaces where we are seeking to find solution to our climate crisis. We really see that there is how you call that, there is a disconnect, and then this is something that we really need to push for, that is the stop to fossil fuel industry activities. And why is this very important? Because this is also very, very relevant to address the historical and present responsibilities of the global North countries for their how you call that, for their contribution in the worsening of the climate crisis. If we are to really put an end to climate colonialism, I really do believe that we need to address the root causes of climate injustices and go towards the just and equitable phase out of fossil fuels. The next point that I want to put is we are advocating, you know, as an advocacy opportunity and as an advocacy entry, as we are fighting for climate justice, is an element and the need to push for intergenerational justice and equity. And I think this principle is very important because this has been incorporated and this has been recognized as a critical element in harmonizing environmental and human rights protection. We understand and we see that there is a very strong intention to separate climate change and human rights. We really need to push for this and go beyond the rights of all of us right now and thinking towards the intergenerational justice and equity, because then the failure of states to act according to this principle really would jeopardize children's ability, our future generations' ability to enjoy the rights they're supposed to enjoy. Another element, the fourth element that I want to share here is the gender transformative approach. And this is not something new, be it in the Paris Agreement as a basis, and it's also as a basis for the intergenerational equity. And as we are looking towards the issues and then into the interconnectedness between climate crisis and food sovereignty, for example, we really see that it is clear that there is a need to push for us civil societies, to push for countries to promote women's knowledge and lived experiences and their traditional food practices, which contributes to reduce emissions rather than to increase the emissions. Now in the NDC, so there is a Paris Agreement, and then at the national level, NDC as a tool at the national level to implement Paris Agreement needs to accommodate, needs to take into account the gender responsiveness and gender transformative approach in order to really realize Paris Agreement, realize real climate actions. So this is something that has been having so much push, because there are a lot of efforts of developed countries to either trading off or pinkwashing in so many global negotiations. Last but not least is, I think, the importance of climate financing that must be just and equitable and accountable to the peoples. We are seeing more effort, more and more push from civil societies and from social movements for a new, adequate, grant-based climate finance flow. from developed countries to all developing countries. Giving you an example, at this moment in the ongoing loss and damage funds negotiation, developed countries again trying to push for the climate finance, for the loss and damage fund to be controlled by the World Bank. And then we know when it is controlled by the World Bank, it means more debt for developing countries. Not only that, the loss and damage fund negotiation at the moment is also trying to define who are eligible to receive the funds. And it means it is not all the developing countries that will be eligible to receive the funds. This is not a climate financing that is just and equitable to just and accountable to the people, because what we want to see is the direct access of the communities to the fund that would be able to answer to their needs. And I think with this, I will leave you with the last message that we have learned the history and what happened in Copenhagen in 2009, where developed countries come together and saying that, and arbitrarily determining how much money we need in order to address climate crisis. I feel that it is very important for us not to let this happen again after 30 years of struggle to get the fund to address loss and damage. One example for that. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to give it back to the facilitator. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Patricia. You have unpacked all the 5 key issues, but I only managed to get the 3. So that is intergenerational justice. This is very important, so that when we are speaking, we are also looking posterity. We are looking at the future. Number 2, I've captured something to do with gender transformation. Yeah, gender transformation approach, very important, so that it is an inclusive, it is a non-inclusive, it brings everybody. We go in the spirit of leaving no one behind. So we become sensitive. And last but not least, you talked about climate financing, and you know that in Africa, we have been making a lot of noise on this climate financing. We are talking about changing the framework, the financing framework, so that it is just. Yeah. So thank you very much for those 5 key pointers. I think to take this conversation forward, I want to introduce my co-facilitator, just to pass it to him so that he can introduce the next speaker and also to take us to the next agenda. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you very much, dear Renfrey. Hello, everybody. My name is Enrique. I'm co-facilitating of this process of climate justice. I'm very happy to be here again with you today. I'm speaking from Brazil, and before our next speaker, we are very okay with time, so we can get a moment for Q&A. So if you have questions, comments, and dialogues you want to do with Patricia, the moment is open. You can raise your hand so I can see you want to speak. Okay, I already see Laura Tabet. Laura, go ahead, please.
Hello, thank you. Thank you so much, Patricia. That was a really incredible way that you outlined everything. There's just the issue of having limited skills or capacities of civil society to access those spaces, or just limited access in general, whether it's funding or time. But I just wanted to know, how did you get where you are today? What are the kinds of skills? Who helped you? How can we train? Just from your personal experience, and also because these spaces have been available for so long and it has been this struggle, what would you like to see now in terms of like the networks that we're part of, how we can support each other, maybe more coordinated action, more targeted messages, because I personally get a bit overwhelmed and lost with all of that. And so you really clearly outlined a lot of things and made some connections before that I hadn't made. So thank you for that. And if you could just, have some recommendations for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lara. Patricia, I suggest that we can get 2 or 3 people, and then you can.
Yeah, don't worry. Yes.
So Derek, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Patricia. In your presentation, you highlighted that there are countless platforms of advocacy space. However, I would like us to understand that yes, these platforms are there, but what's wrong? What may be the problem? The previous speaker talked of skills and so on, but I want us to understand that it may not be about skills, but it may be the people we are advocating to. Are they taking these things into consideration anyway? Or is it that what we are speaking is hard to put in action? So I think we should now advocate for more, I think, practical and doable things rather than office and workshop mechanisms that can't be put on ground, that are maybe out of space. So this is my view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. Desmond?
Thank and the presentation is actually well informed, but I would like to just get your view on the strategies that actually with the civil society organization, but at the national, regional, and the international level in terms of expanding the conversation on issues of climate justice. Just as you mentioned, the spaces are there. But yes, we have the spaces, but how can we effectively engage in these spaces? And one other key point I would like for you made mention of the COP. It is clear, I might be wrong, that civil society, if you want to make your position at the COP, you have to go through your national government to make sure that your position is included or captured in the national government position. True. And if your position is not taken at that level, then it becomes difficult to make that presentation at the COP. Now, as civil society organizations and working together as network, how do we push forward to make sure that our position are being taken, or there is a space open for civil society organizations to effectively present their position? Thank you.
Thank you, Desmond. We can hear Guillermo and then give the floor back to Patricia, and maybe we can have a second round of interventions. Guillermo, please.
Sí, bueno, una consulta para Patricia y.
Well, this is a question for Patricia. First of all, thank you for this illuminating presentation. For climate justice and social justice interrelations, how we understand that communities, NGOs, and groups operate as an organized community, understanding the scope of environmental issues. Each community has its own social needs that come on a daily basis, and more often than not, climate discussions are left on the side, just on big places by the big fish. And in the communities, the neighbors, and in our daily activities, the needs are pressing, such as lack of drinking water. So environmental issues are far-fetched instead of something that we find close to our heart. Or the problem could be as easy as a ditch to solve something that is environmentally affecting us. So what are the keys that you could give us to work on climate justice and social justice on a daily basis with our organized communities? Thank you very much, Guillermo.
So, Patricia, the floor is yours now. We still have 9 minutes for comment.
Thank you so much, Henrik. 9 minutes to answer all these things. Okay, but also I see a lot of chats in the chat box. So thank you so much for those chats. I'm not gonna able to locate what are the questions because there are a lot of interpretations and everything. But if there are any burning questions, Enrique, please help me to flag. Yeah. Because from the intervention, I have, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 very, very, very important questions. Because I'm not answering questions from governments. I'm answering questions of fellow climate justice activists, climate crisis activists, and I think a lot of them are very, very critical. Yeah, I guess first from Lara, I remember what kind of skills. I think the second, the Derek was answering it partially, that to access all these advocacy spaces, skills is one thing, but what we are really facing is the merging power of the polluters with the rich countries that's really supported by many of our own governments to limit the access, be it through oppression, be it through limit our freedom of assembly, of association, be it through intimidation to our environment and women human rights defenders who are struggling on a daily basis on the with their communities on the ground. The problem is the shrinking advocacy spaces. That is a problem, and I believe that many of us here, for example, in Asia, we know that Philippines is one of the deadliest countries when you are trying to advocate to defend your land and territories and resources, or you're trying to speak up to enter these advocacy spaces, policy dialogues with your governments. As that you're being executed. We know how difficult it is, the situation for human rights defenders in Colombia, for example, in Latin America. So that is something that I want to share, and I think this is a problem that is not something new. I guess Laura was asking a very, very, very personal question to me that I don't know how to answer in a few minutes. What leads me to this? I think what really leads me, and then that is something that I put, it's a lot of privilege, but also a lot of struggle. I want to acknowledge that I was able to speak the language, that the colonial language that is English, hence I could be able to access many different spaces. But as I was, and I still am, a very little island girl coming from indigenous communities who were fighting so hard to defend their land from mining companies, but that is that there are this advocacy spaces, especially for climate movements, is very. It is savage, if I can put that, because we know what we are up against, the very interest of the biggest industrial countries and the biggest companies and corporations that are controlling almost everything in this world. They're basically fueling all the military funding and everything. So I just want to put it in that context, and I think I will not be able to answer your question, Laura, but I want to really, if we have other time, we will discuss about that. But I think what really drives me, if I can put it, is really the struggles from my communities and really seeing injustices that you want to contribute even a little bit into what has been going on at different levels, starting from your communities. And Desmond, strategies of CSOs at the national, regional, international levels. How do we expand advocacy for climate justice? I really do think that with the deepening inequalities, with the unprecedented deepening of inequalities, this is the time that we really need concerted efforts. Be it at we cannot afford disconnect, at the local level, at the national level, the regional level, and at the global level. This is something that sometimes I feel many of us are work in silos, and this is why HIC as a coalition, SCRnet also, for example, as a coalition is very important, plays very important roles, because then you bring a lot of different or civil society organizations with different expertise and then with their different lived experiences. So you need to connect all these forefront communities, because what happened at COP will not stop at COP. This needs to go back to the national level. And it's not only COP. I mean, another advocacy space, for example, universal periodic reviews. Well, again, I'm talking very technical, and I sometimes really try to avoid that. But basically, countries reporting at the national level, being questioned at the international level, being questioned for their obligations. This needs to go back to the national level, asking again the concerned countries, so what do you do with all these questions or the obligations that are going down from the treaty bodies? And there are a lot of that. What I am really saying is that we cannot afford disconnect in our climate justice movement. We really need to strengthen our concerted efforts. And another element is that climate justice issues is a social justice issue, is a gender justice issue, is a feminist issue, is issues of indigenous peoples. All of these things, we need to strengthen the intersectional analysis in order to address the very fundamental issue that we have, that is addressing the climate crisis. And this does not mean that climate crises affect everyone, but we need to also acknowledge and recognize that and reaffirm that climate crisis, the impact of climate crisis do not affect everyone equally. Hence, the importance that we really need to put in our advocacy, the importance of the frontline communities. Yes, so for the COP28, and Guillermo, you were gold in your question. I have to say, really, that is the most important question. And this is really the frustration that is happening while the bloodshed is happening and at the national level, at the local level. Countries are talking about where do we put the loss and damage fund, whom the money should go after 30 years of negotiations, and then people are drowning. Our sisters and brothers in the Pacific are drowning, and then in the negotiations they're talking like that. I do agree with you. I don't disagree with any of your, of these things, that the pace of global negotiations is incredible. And then the need to bridge all this information going to the communities is something that is so very critical. We as climate justice activists have so much, heavy mandates in order to really bring this back, because our governments failed to do that. But also, I think another thing that's very important, and this is also related to the question about COP28. I know my time is up. Give me 1 minute, Enrique. As we are going to COP28, I think what we really need to utilize is different spaces in COP28. And I say this because HIC also trying to engage with COP28. There are several lines there. One is the action. Another one is in the negotiation room. Another one is having bilateral talks with the government. And, I'm not saying that the COP28 space is a perfect space. We know it is being dominated by the corporations and by the polluters. To really question now, how do we consolidate all the efforts and really strategize, and using all different strategies that we have and our experiences. Plus, we should not forget that social movements and communities should be at the core of our advocacy when we are going to many different advocacy spaces. Enrique, thank you so much for your kindness. I'm going to stop here. I hope I do justice to all the questions.
Thank you so much, Patricia. We really appreciate your participation. I hope you can stay with us until the end of the session. It will be our pleasure. And also, we are very proud to be members of ERCRnet. I think you are doing a great work at the network. Thank you so much. So, everybody, I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is Dr. Hala Barakat. Hala Barakat is an archaeobotanist with PhD in paleoecology from the University of Marseille III from France. She worked as a lecturer at the Cairo University and as deputy director at the Center for the Documentation of Cultural and Natural Heritage, affiliated to the Library of Alexandria. She also joined the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights as head of Right to Food Unit, and recently she finished a book entitled Food in Ancient Egypt. Hala is an activist, an environmental activist. We are also very happy to have her here. Hala, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I will actually start from where Patricia ended, or I mean, things that she touched upon, the spaces, because I am currently in Rome for a meeting at the Food and Agriculture Organization, the UN Organization for Food and Agriculture. I am part of the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism, which is part of this multilateral space called the Committee on Food Security. And just to start off about the advocacy spaces that Patricia was also referring to, let's say that within this Committee on Food Security, there is this current awareness of the urgency of addressing climate change and loss of biodiversity. And this shows within their next 4 years, which they call the multi-year plan of work, 2024 to 2027, where there is this work stream on climate change. So this is, of course, a very important space. And I'll come back to it a little bit later also to explain why I think it's very important to have this within Food and Agriculture Organization. But also, as Patricia was saying, there are concerns about these advocacy spaces. One of them is very clear, even at the Food and Agriculture Organization, which is in the case of COP, it's the domination of the polluters. In the case of the FAO, it's the corporate capture. They go hand in hand together, corporate capture and the domination of those who are actually causing the problems. This is what makes these advocacy spaces limited. I mean, what limits the advocacy spaces for us. And it also goes without saying that within this corporate capture, there is also the co-optation of concepts. And co-optation of concepts starts with ideas about sustainability and goes all the way now to a good appreciation or a good direction of the use of the fund that is supposed to be coming to solve problems related to food injustice, the loss and damage fund. I add to this also that what Patricia referred to, this control of the loss and damage fund by the World Bank, which is more a reason for the need, what we need to do, what are the gaps, the need to have a clear plan of what we want out of this loss and damage fund, and also be ready and prepared and directed to where it's going to help us to solve the problems. And now I go back to my perspective of things. Being a botanist, an archaeobotanist, as you said, and also now working on issues related to food politics. Within this arena of civil society organization on a regional and global level, we see this immediate connection between the climate change, the climate injustice, and the food crisis. So we talk about food security, but of course, what we want to talk about for more is food sovereignty. We see that this climate injustice is affecting the most impoverished. I don't use the most poor, but I say the most impoverished of the world. And also the marginalized. The marginalized in the sense of what already some of the things we talked about, the women and girls. The urban, the low-income urban and suburban areas, the water-poor regions. These are the ones who are the most affected by the climate change, and who need most the climate justice. And then we need to think about how to apply the climate justice. During the COP27, which I attended in Sharm, being from Egypt also, it was easier, and also within my NGO for nature conservation in Egypt, I came out with this idea that this might have been a financial success because we have the loss and damage fund, but it was an environmental disaster because no one was talking about stopping the reasons, the structured reasons for the climate change. Everyone was talking about now we have money for mitigation and adaptation. And it's in itself, it's a catastrophe. But this is where we are. And now we have to think, what are we going to do with this fund? And be prepared. First of all, of course, to try to use it, because to have it and use it, which is going to be a struggle in itself. But even when it's there, it needs to be directed to solving the structural causes of the effects of the climate deterioration. Like, of course, we talk about weather phenomena, extreme weather phenomena. We talk about the floods, the droughts, the catastrophes that are happening in the world. But at the end of the day, we need to see if we can direct this part of these funds at least to producing food for the people who are mostly affected by these catastrophes. Directing the money to produce food, but not within what is usually proposed, which is, as we all now hear, climate smart agriculture, or depending on the extreme digitalization of agriculture. The alternative would be to direct these funds to agroecological systems of food production, traditional food systems that have been sustaining and feeding the world for thousands of years, using indigenous and heirloom seeds, and not allowing the companies to find this as an entry point to selling and imposing the seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides on the farmers, and supporting the small food producers. If we can solve a clear problem of food deficiency through part of this funds, then I think we would be doing justice to it. And it's also a need that's very clear in all the regions that we're talking about. So when we look also at some of the community solutions, we will see that it's already doing this. There is this community solidarity in order to help those who are not able to access food or who are not able to use their land. I will add to this, of course, this human rights dimension. Looking at the climate justice from a human rights perspective. The right to clean environment, but also the right to land, the right to cultivating one's own crops, which is not a given at the moment. At the moment, for example, from what we hear through this meeting at the Committee on Food Security, Mexico is going through a difficult process of defending their seeds and their crops against the U.S. domination on the seed market and also on the crop production. So this is not going to be something that's going to be easy to deal with. And Africa has a lot of resources, and I link to this also indigenous knowledge that we need to be focusing on. I see the timer going out, and I would finally like to thank everyone for this opportunity, but also for the amazing sessions that have been already taken place, and I've read through them. And I think many of these issues have already been covered. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hala. I really appreciate your contribution. The idea of the questions that Humphrey suggested for us for this first session about what are the common struggles regarding climate injustice. And you said, as you said, it is very interesting to connect the climate crisis and the food crisis, because the communities that are facing both crises are communities that are living in ground, having to face poverty, land rights violation, etc. So I would, if I may, I would also add the land rights issue, because it's very important for us.
Absolutely, absolutely, land rights.
To reflect how these violations are combined together in the same context of climate injustice. So thank you very much. And we, as we had with Patricia, we have now a moment for Q&A. And please, everyone who wants to comment or make some questions to Hala, you are really invited. You can raise your hands, please. Derek, go ahead, my dear friend.
Okay, thank you very much. I thank the previous speaker. I think she justified some key issues like the land rights and the community solidarity. However, my question is, I would like her to exploit more on the point of land rights, since, you know, we are seeing that this is a neglected human right by the government. Yet I think we would see that the government is giving out, maybe say, pointing out land for maybe tree planting, maybe agriculture, food security, and also other things. But we see that the government is more looking at the development of infrastructures, the development of industries, which is really exacerbating a lot of climate change issues in Africa today. And the case point of Uganda, we have a scenario whereby we have a problem of land tenure, whereby we have the private land ownership, and we have the Milo, and we have other land ownership. But we have the Physical Planning Act that was declared in 2010 that says that all land is a planning area. But you find out that implementing such issues, even though there is community solidarity, like she has justified, you will find that the problem is still there to have clear access to such strategic points of how people can access land, especially in addressing climate issues. Thank you very much. I would just like to her to exploit more on that point of land rights.
Yes, let me immediately come back to that. So this is one of the things that link directly to the problem, the issues of food production, of course. And it's multifaceted, as you said. It has this dimension of the government's approaches to the land rights or the lack of it. And it is sometimes very complex because, of course, we have the issue of the historical use of land, which means that the indigenous people have been living in an area for thousands of years and have been using the resources sustainably, are now being looked upon as maybe not the landowners. So we have the indigenous people, and then we also have the as you mentioned, the use of the land. So the use of the land is critical, and it's one of the things that I also, but because of the time, I wanted also to go into it. The land use has to be for producing crops to feed the people. Industrial land use or industrial agriculture is usually for industrial uses, fuels, etc. And this is, of course, cannot be a priority for most of the countries who are countries suffering from food crises. And the use, the abuse, I will say it, I'll call it, of land has been shifted to these countries. Brazil, Africa. And then, of course, we have the issue of the landless. The landless are those who are cultivating, working on the land without owning the land. And this is a big issue in many of our countries. These have no rights to the land. And these are often marginalized and disregarded, and are not also included when it comes to any kind of funds or projects that would help them improve their living conditions. And we go back to the idea of the small food producers. Small food producers are those who are feeding the world. 70% of the food that we are eating comes from small food producers. Small food producers have very little land rights. So land rights are part and parcel of the problem. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, Hala. Desmond, you're the next. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you very much, Hara, for your presentation. I think I really enjoyed the presentation. But I want you to actually let as a coalition, we are looking out to how we can positively engage. And so I'm thinking, what do you think is the best way for us to engage or challenge the dominant power structure and the corporate influence that we have actually talked about, that are being the barrier and the bottleneck for our own process? Secondly, we know, and it is being recognized, that the issue of competency is a problem at the local level and community level in terms of promoting sustainable, just food system. What do you think we can do to change this scenario? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Desmond, for this question. It's not an easy question to answer. And but there are recommendations into how we can work. I can also talk a bit from a grassroots perspective about the projects that have already been carried out, and even within an urban and suburban context. For food, let's say, transforming food systems. And I think this is what we really need to look into now, transforming the food systems, transforming them towards a more agroecological, but in the sense of that actually relates a lot to our traditional food systems. And that means that this land is going to be arable for the future, so transgenerational, as we have already, they have the right for that, arable for a long time, producing the crops that are pertinent and indigenous to the region, heirloom seeds where the farmers can reuse and reuse every year. So I think the coalition can also be active in this. I've recently been working in Cairo on a small island of 1,400 inhabitants south of Cairo. And on this island, we're trying to create this like a circular economy. They're already doing a lot of it, but the pollution around them in the Nile has been very strong. So the first thing was to try to clean the water and help the people on the island find like a source of income through working on products out of this plastic, mainly plastic that comes out. And also parallel to this, we're creating community garden, a healthy food kitchen, maybe even a community kitchen, which is happening, of course, in a charity way, but we want it to be more organized. And this is like a small, very small, let's say, window on these kinds of initiatives that could be pluralized and which work towards solving problems of pollution, climate change, and food scarcity. Thank you.
Thank you, Hala. We'll still have some seconds, but I really would like to give the floor to our friend Musa Khan. Please, Musa, go ahead. Musa, you are muted. Can you hear us, Musa? Musa, the floor is yours, please.
If not, maybe you can write in the chat.
Yes, please. I invite Musa to write in the chat your comment or question. Thank you so much, Hala. You brought very interesting inputs for our conversation. I think they are very precious to the advocacy strategy that we are trying to develop inside in HIC in this moment. So thank you very much for your collaboration.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So friends, I would like to introduce our third speaker, our dear President, Adriana Allen. You all know Adriana, but I have the task of presenting her. Adriana, as you know, is the president of our coalition and professor of the development and planning and urban sustainability at the Bartlett Development Planning Unit of the University College of London. Originally from Argentina, Adriana has over 35 years of international experience in research, pedagogy, advocacy, advisory, and capacity building, undertaken in almost 30 countries across the global south. So we all know Adriana, and Adriana has many contributions regarding climate justice, food security, land rights. She has written very interesting books. So I'll let you with our dear Adriana, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Enrique. And I just want to say a massive thanks to Hala and Patricia on behalf of everyone for their clarity, their boldness, and for putting so much on the table for our discussion. We are moving forward into not only the last session, but a very important part of our last session, which is a moment in which we really want to open all micros, open the floor to the key purpose of this session, but also a key purpose of the co-learning space on climate justice, which is really to craft together, to form a community of practice and craft together an advocacy pathway. And so I want to take a few minutes. I can see the little clock, so I will try to be as short as possible. And I just want to reflect on what we have heard, what we have discussed over the last 4 sessions at 2 levels. Yes, just to land into that conversation. On the one hand, I want to talk a bit about the things that really stuck with me through the conversations we had in terms of the what is the core, what is the content of our message, if you wish, advocacy work. And then also just dedicate some time to the how. There were many ideas on the how, on the principles that should guide, the strategies. How do we go about advocacy? So let me start by saying that when I listen back to all the sessions, and not just to the speakers, but also to the many points that you put forward, I feel that they all fully resonate with the 5 points we put forward in an advocacy document that was our 2021 statement that we crafted just before the COP26. I mentioned on the first session 3 of those points, but I want to recap a bit and make some of the connections around those 5 points. The first one clearly is that we all talk about the need for profound distribution. And this, of course, is not over, and it manifests in multiple ways. You will all remember Emmanuel saying last session, just as the COVID-19 pandemic is remembered or talked about as the inequality virus, so should climate change be talked as the inequality crisis. So I think that there is a very strong sense and a very strong sense of an agreement around the fact that we cannot just tweak around the edges. Here we are talking about a structural transformation, which of course is not easy, which of course takes time and a lot of energy. A lot of the discussion was around finance, and justly, of course. But again, I think that something really important that came from the discussion was not only the need to localize climate finance, including the Loss and Damage Fund, which is threatened to be taken and again captured by the same architecture, governance architecture that has got us stuck, completely stuck for so many years. But also about the democratizing. I think that we need to think about not only localizing, but localizing and democratizing. And not only doing that with climate finance, but with finance at many levels. Fair distribution, as we describe or we call for in that 2021 document, involves localizing support for the multiple processes that sustain circular and solidarity economies, that sustain or enhance mobility beyond individual modes of transport, that shorten food chains, that protect and restore indigenous people's food sovereignty, and the list goes on. And we do need to remember and very much keep on making those connections, that the question here is not just encapsulated within the word that defines itself as having something to do with climate change, but it's much more broader. And the discussion, the points that Hala raised around the question of food and food sovereignty are a great example of precisely that. Important as well for us to think and discuss in the time we have ahead of us of what fair distribution means, particularly when we're talking not only about linking climate change with a human rights approach, but also with human rights related to the habitat. And so the issues of land, we talk a bit about the issue of land, is absolutely a priority, but also the issue of housing and the issue of the mechanisms that we call the social production of habitat, of housing, and so on, that are already in place. They don't need to be invented. They are already driving the way in which our cities are built, and they need to be acknowledged, supported, not just, again, by an NGO, by a foundation here or there. They need to be fully endorsed by national governments and internationally. The second point in that 2021 document was our call for the recognition of differences, invisibilities, and inequalities. And of course, this, again, a lot has been said throughout the last few sessions and again today, the point that, of course, we need to go beyond just the claim that climate change disproportionately affects some people, but really talk explicitly about the specific intersections that put people at the end of those burdens. And we're talking about the intersection of course, gender, age, physical and mental ability, class, geographical location, tenure, security, and the list goes on. Race, of course, and class, and so on. So we do need to insist on that. Let's think, for instance, that we know very clearly that when climate change strikes, it does so first on poor and impoverished communities. But let's remember as well that when we look at who lives below the poverty line, 70% of those who live under the poverty lines globally are women and girls. So we can't just talk about people. We need to talk about women, about girls, about, again, all these intersections that put people in a particular situation. A third point that we call in that paper has to do with the issue of parity in political participation. And here again, there was a very clear reference by Patricia about the frustration with this capture, corporate capture, and also a reference, a very strong reference made by Patricia in this regard, of the COP process and of many of the processes that in which we are trying to advocate for significant change. This cannot be underestimated, and I think that here what we need to emphasize is that we are not talking just about participation in climate change negotiations, in SDGs negotiations, and so on. We are talking about parity of political participation. And that means for organized civil society to have a seat at the table, not just to be listening in the outskirts of those critical conversations. I'm doing really poorly with time, so I'm going to speed up. Fourth point that we had an idea introduce or talk about in the first session, but is also on our 2021 statement, is to, in the fight for climate justice, also talk about human rights habitat, no war. And this is really important. And I want to emphasize two concepts here that perhaps have come up as a concern from many of you, and perhaps less explicitly addressed. One is just to understand or remember that when we talk about climate justice requires both conflict-sensitive climate action and climate-proof peacemaking, peace building. And these two things absolutely have to go together. When you think that 8 of the 10 countries that today are more exposed to massive peacemaking operations are also massively exposed to climate change vulnerability, the equation, is very, very easy. We cannot do without tackling climate change simultaneously with the critical issue of building sustainable peace. And this is extraordinarily important. Also connected to this issue of conflict and climate change is the issue of course, global corporate extraction, because we know that many of the conflicts that we are seeing today are very much linked precisely to the continuity of global corporate extraction of key resources. So again, there is a very strong link there. Final point in our paper was around mutual care, solidarity, and responsibility. Of course, we talk a lot about solidarity. We talk a lot about the role of care. And of course, that means also caring for carers, going beyond and recognizing the role played by women as carers at multiple scales. But taking all this beyond a charitable or paternalistic perspective is crucial. And that means also calling upon the issue of responsibility. The question of responsibility, and particularly of a state responsibility, is crucial and requires bold and unambiguous political commitment and action. I'm going just to dedicate a few seconds to talk about a bit of the how. For me, there were 7 elements in terms of how we go about the strategy that could be like principles that emerge listening to all of you and really resonate for me. The first one was a point that Abir put forward. I think that it was last session when she talked about the continuum of advocacy. She said it is all about mobilizing, resisting, and transforming. And that's absolutely essential. We cannot approach advocacy as a discrete moment without building, without the mobilization, without building social force, as we're doing right now. Advocacy has very short legs. A second point that was highlighted again today and in previous sessions is the need to work across regions, hence this space, the fact that very often we are bogged down by the reality, the immediate reality in which we are immersed, the struggles, immediate struggles with which we are fighting. And it's only by finding many of the commonalities, as we are doing now, as we have been doing throughout the last 3 sessions, that we start to find and to find different ways of fighting those struggles and also connecting the dots. I think that connecting the dots and connecting the struggles is absolutely essential. And again, this is something that came again and again today. I will end very shortly. Third point, fighting against the over-responsabilization of those most affected. I spoke before about the issue of responsibility. And what we find in the climate change debate is typically the opposite, typically an over-reliance on asking and calling for poor and impoverished women and men to even stretch further their coping capacities to adapt, to become resilient, and so on. And this really needs to change. This narrative needs to be challenged and changed. Fourth, holding international negotiating frameworks and national governments accountable to organized civil society. A lot has been said today about the shrinking spaces of international advocacy and of national decision-making, and this is something crucial. Fifth, fighting not only the localization of finance and commitments, but their collective control. The issue of control is essential. We need accountability on the use of those resources. Six, setting precedents on localized action towards climate justice. I heard nothing but lots of precedents. All of you talking about the multiple things that we are already doing, that communities all over the world are already doing through social production of habitat processes, already in showing how climate justice looks in very concrete terms. So it's all about really bringing to the front those experiences. And last but not least, I think that it's really important to focus on flipping the script. Today there was a reference, I think that it was Hala, that talked about the fact that we constantly find that any claim, any advocacy claim is constantly co-opted. Many of the concepts are co-opted. We find that actually the fight of linking climate justice with human rights, with issues of social and environmental justice has not been co-opted. And this is a critical space to keep for us. So I just want to finish with a very short example of what flipping the script means, or how it might look like. Is a bit of a broad brush, is a very short video that was produced to support the SDGs, or the core, what is at the core of the SDGs. Here we go.
Thank you so much, Adriana, for this effort on putting together so many elements of the sessions in a few minutes. You have a great capacity of summarizing and give us the strong messages of this journey that we are having together on climate justice. So, my friends, we have about 15 minutes to react. It's not necessarily a questions and answers moment right now to Adriana, but it's an open space of dialogue and comments about what do we expect from HIC to develop an advocacy strategy regarding climate justice. So the idea is to draft our roadmap of advocacy, and what are your considerations about that? So I see 3 hands raised, Derek, then Sami, and after Sami, Hala. Please, Derek, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Speaking of flipping the script, I have a question for Alain. And my simple question is, I think I want to know how, all the points she has aired out. There is a key factor that addresses all of them to me and to our approach as African Defenders Africa. Is diligence. What do I mean by diligence? Is paying attention to details. In which way? Paying attention to feedback from civil society, paying attention from feedback to the world climate change today. Many platforms of advocacy, many things are being set up because of the big outcome that happens, and all the media goes that side, the UN, all the civil societies focus on that because it's a big era. But what is the call of paying attention to details, to the small details, not just looking at the big factors? So my issue is, how can HIC and the members at large address the issue of diligence in climate change perspective? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. Sami, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. To be honest, I thank all the previous speakers very much. I have some comments or observations about our strategy in the coalition. Mainly, what everybody's talked about was great. However, till now, the coalition, we need to have a strategy to care for the marginalized groups or the minorities, because they are the most impacted by climate change, particularly children and women. HIC should take into consideration supporting minorities or the marginalized in a way that local member organizations are able to contribute. Until now, I haven't seen in the coalition any move or support to the members in the ground or in the local places in order to contribute to writing projects, proposals, building campaigns, preparing advocacy. There must be support on part of the coalition for the members in order to be able to do this on the ground. This is very important. And it was one of the questions that I had about the role of the coalition in supporting its members on the ground as part of their membership, as part of their presence in this global Habitat International Coalition. Thanks to the speakers and thanks to everyone.
Thanks, Sami. Hala, please, the floor is yours.
شكرا هنريكي.
Thank you, Henrique. Thank you, Adriana. I praise what Enrique said, that you have a very good ability to summarize And depending on the draft, the main climate justice or the main HIC climate justice document as a baseline, a reference for us to work through. Today, we don't start from scratch, but we already have an advocacy agenda among our members or within the coalition, and this should be praised. The point I would like to mention quickly is that we also always talk about funding as if it is the main savior in the issue of climate justice, and without it, we cannot work. However, our presence at civil society organizations and as coalitions is what creates the real struggles that should be the main effort towards climate change and their impact on the more marginalized and local communities. I would like to talk about funding in 2 points. Number one is that we forget everyone talking about funding. We talk about the loss and damage fund, and we forget that there were previous funds that haven't been filled yet. There were promises and funds that should have been paid that were not paid. They were deferred from 2020 and if we focus only on loss and damage without talking about adaptation, and I know that adaptation could be more important, it could be paid once with loss and damage, but there's a lot of money that can be paid that we need in the front lines, part of which is Latin America, the Middle East, and North Africa, and Africa, naturally. The second point with which I will conclude about funding is that we looked mainly to the fact that when greater powers wish to pay, they can pay. America alone during the past 2 weeks allocated 105 billion for the war in Gaza and in Ukraine to support Israel and to support Ukraine in the face of the Russian war. I tell you that when there are interests with these major powers, they have funds. They do not want to disburse the money. The money is there, but the interests are for us to stay in this dialogue between us, and that the best of cases it is expressed in COP and some solidarity stands, but in reality we need larger work, and we need to put these facts in front of all the actors and stakeholders to tell them you have a historical responsibility and you have an accumulation of wealth. You are the ones who created this situation that gave us all this crisis. We need to have a strong discussion, and I affirm what Sami said, that we need plans on the ground. But Sami, this work that we are doing today by discussing together is one of the most important tools, because we are empowering civil society organizations to have more knowledge about what is linked to their work and to perform it on the ground. The role of HIC is to support you with this information and this experience that you are getting through the co-learning space. I apologize for taking long. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hala. I totally agree with you. You brought a very important element. We cannot only focus on the loss and damage fund. We cannot forget about mitigation and adaptation, and there are lots of funds on that, and the countries are not making their work. So thank you very much for bringing these elements. Hillary, you're the next, my friend, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I just said one contribution to this. I think we have had for the last 4 weeks, we've been having a very fruitful and informing and educative discussion during these learning spaces. So I one maybe we work on or around having a co-learning space, not a co-learning space, sorry, a working group, particularly on climate justice, which will take over the work which has been also the inputs and also the work which has been built around the co-learning space. So I think just basically, if you can hear me, that is basically what I was trying to, what would be my contribution to say that maybe we could have a working group which would particularly focus on climate justice according to the 4 pillars of the HIC, 4 pillars of working and co-learning, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. I would also, I want to highlight what is here from the chat, I think from Marina, about what's happening in Middle East countries that are facing struggles with war, and the Middle East countries that are not very aware or not doing many things about the climate crisis, and how can our strategy also consider that we have differences regarding our regional realities in terms of struggles and what we are facing in the ground. So I don't see any other hands. So I would like to ask, okay, Shima, yeah, you raise your hand right now, please go ahead.
شكرا لكم شكرا على جميع
Thank you for all the ideas you mentioned during this very interesting meeting. I would like to express myself. I am Shima from Jordan, from the Bean for Environmental Development. To start with, I would like to mention what my colleagues mentioned about the role of the youth in advocacy, particularly with relation to climate justice, very important role, especially in Jordan. When we talk about a country like Jordan, it is a developing country with less weak. I will represent Jordan during COP28 this year in Dubai, and I will be keen, God willing, on relaying the voices of individuals in my country from all over Jordan, especially in the villages that suffer a lot of the negative impact due to climate change, in particular with relation to water. I will also focus on the issue of climate justice on this point. From the point of the lack of water in Jordan, it is the poorest country worldwide with relation to the supply of water. I would like to focus always, and I would like for all those present to call always for the importance of supporting the youth and guaranteeing, ensuring their presence and empowering them in the area of advocacy in all international conferences. And empowering them because they are the voice of the future, the coming voice of the future, and they are the most impacted by climate change due to the major role they have in raising awareness about climate challenges and their impact on their communities, especially a red line on the villages, for example, because the role of the youth in political participation and lobbying for a stronger climate measures, and also to adopt the technological and creative ideas. I would like to express myself and speak for many youth in the Jordan whose ideas, technology and creative ideas are not adopted. for this year. I'm happy that the youth voice will reach a COP in Dubai, and I would like to express the importance of the continuous participation of youth in the discussions that contribute to changing climate policies. And I emphasize always that as youth, we have a power to shape the future, to preserve our planet. And I ask you all to focus on what Ms. Hala Murad mentioned with relation to funding and the powers do with funding when it has to do with their negative causes such as war. But when they are needed to show their funding to preserve the souls of children and the future of the youth, we don't find their participation, unfortunately. Thank you for hearing, and I apologize if I had taken more time than I should have. Thank you.
Thank you, Shima. I wish you all the best during COP28. Very good to know that you are so young, representing our coalition and representing the team in the conference. Thank you so much. I wish you the best. So people, we are about to end the session. I'll give the floor to Diana. I don't know what, Diana, do you want to react on some comments? No? Okay, thank you very much. So Diana, please, back to you.
Thank you very much, Henrique, for that wonderful moderation. And thank you to our speakers and to our participants. I'm sure we are feeling, we are having that feeling of, conclusion and of now taking it further. We have really gone through the 4 kinds of building blocks to our climate justice advocacy agenda. And as someone mentioned, we already now have the ingredients. We just need to come back together again and decide how do we package these ingredients and how do we have an agenda, as Hilary was saying. So mine is to appreciate all of us and to, again, remember this session, all this work has been put together by our facilitators. And it's my pleasure to invite them to briefly, in 1 minute each, to really share very few remarks as we close the climate justice co-learning sessions or space. Remember, it's not really a closure of the conversation, advancing it to the next level. We're now taking it into a level where we are going to firm up our action based on all these conversations we've had. So without wasting time, I'll invite our participants to briefly, in 1 minute, say something. We'll start with the MENA region, and that is represented by Laura and Abir. So we'll start with Laura and then go to Abir.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, it's been a great journey to learn more about climate and really see it as a matter of justice, not just in terms of pointing fingers or blame, but also seeing the different capacities and roles that we have, and that in terms of that participation or that capacity that we have, that there is, and it's been reiterated in all the sessions, this capture of the spaces that we're trying to advocate in and of power. So learning more about how to navigate those power structures and targeting those structural issues that are at the cause. I mean, it's been very intense 4 weeks, and I really hope that this space can continue, because we talk about this ongoing advocacy. That's also been kind of a common thread of how do we just keep the advocacy going. And for me, this has been difficult sometimes to make the time to work on this, but it is so important. And I'm looking forward to see how we can use technology to work better, be more connected, find other ways of engaging with the participants, with speakers. If Google Classroom wasn't as active as we hoped, and the chat has been, I mean, there's a lot that I'm looking forward to learn on communication within the network in these spaces, so that they're time efficient and that we can learn as much as possible from each other. And yeah, we saw a short video today on flipping the script. I'm sure we can do great videos. I really look forward to also thinking about different ways we can campaign. It was mentioned also, how do we advocate at the local level with our neighbors, our communities, and our friends? I don't know, maybe the intergenerational justice argument will win people's hearts, but we need to learn how to be extremely good communicators in all these spaces. Thank you once more to HIC, the facilitators, speakers, and of course the participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Abir, you have your 1 minute.
شكرا للجميع.
Thank you, everyone. It was an important and exceptional opportunity to share, learn, and exchange knowledge and experience on climate work and climate policies. We all have a responsibility to play our role in advocacy and work to achieve climate justice and the just move and transition. What we need now, more than any other time, is to mobilize and enable, to empower the communities in order to enhance their active participation and contribution to affect climate policies. Such spaces are very important to mobilize and network and exchange experience between activists in different communities, regions, and on the international and the global level, as well as creating leaders that are aware and capable of working to achieve justice for everyone. I look forward to get to know more the advocacy strategy for climate justice of HIC and to work all together in order to implement some steps here on the local level as well as on the global level. It was a very happy opportunity to participate in such a space for learning. We always learn and benefit and give each other energy to go forward in this field. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abir. I will now move to the Africa facilitators, and I'll invite Frank to also share very brief remarks because of the time. Frank, you have 1 minute.
Voilà, merci Diana.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Diana. I wanted to just say that for me, it was a great success. I was able to contribute, I was able to participate, and today the question of climate justice is more than a reality. And I would like to thank very much our coalition for having innovated these co-learning spaces, and especially on questions of climate. In all this adventure that we've had together, we have made a full tour of the questions of climate justice, but we have gone further than that. I think in our exchanges, in our proposals, I think HIC needs to take all this together and put together a very strong advocacy so that we can hold the polluters accountable. And I think we should not forget the question of habitat, which is connected to the environment and to climate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frank. Let's hear from Humphrey. Humphrey, you have 1 minute.
For me, thank you very much, all. I think this has been quite a resourceful space for learning and exchanging knowledge and experiences. So there's quite a lot that we need to do, and just looking forward to taking it to the next level, as you already said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Humphrey. We now move to Latin America. Elise, your 1 minute.
Bueno, muchas gracias a todas y a todos.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's been a wonderful experience to get to know each and every one of you. And I'm talking about the facilitators team and also the HIC team. It's been such a fun ride to share this experience with all of you. I also think that it's very valuable to have these spaces and understand realities, the different realities from different regions and different disciplines, so we can build real actions that go beyond the narrative. We can find inspiration in the examples that we share. we can continue reflecting, thinking, and acting, because that's what's important to shift the journey where we are heading to. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Elise. Well said. And then, of course, last but definitely not least, Henrique, your 1 minute.
Muchas gracias, Diana. Nada más que agradecer. Estoy
Thank
muy
you very much, Diana. I just want to say thank you. I'm super happy of the process that we went through. I'm learning every day from my co-facilitators. And I feel that from this co-learning space, I feel more prepared on climate justice and climate change. This is something I wish for everyone, that everyone has some takeaways from these co-learning spaces. Thank you to all the HIC team, to everyone, Diana, Yolanda, Adriana, Hala. I can tell you are superstars. It's always an honor to work with each and every one of you. And I also want to tell you that I stand in heart and spirit with my brothers and sisters in Palestine. As organizations, we are pushing the Brazilian government to observe the obligation, because Brazil is the chair of the UN Security Council, and I believe that the Brazilian government is doing an important job to benefit our brothers and sisters in Palestine. So my heart goes out to you and all my love.
Thank you very much, Henrique, and thank you for also ending on that note of solidarity. One of our facilitators, our dear Bear, has been really part of this process despite the situation, and we just want to again appreciate her and just also continuously send this spirit of solidarity. Members, thank you very much. I think from the facilitators team, from the learning officers, from the regional offices and the General Secretariat, all we can say is thank you so much for your time and for your contribution. We've had over 30 countries participating across all the regions, across all the HIC regions. So that is not a small thing, it's a big feat. We always want to hear from you. Please feel free to respond to the evaluation that will be sent to you. These are the evaluation forms of the core learning spaces. We always want to improve and to do better. That's why we really insist on getting to learn on how to improve from you. So when we send out that email, please take a second or two to fill in the evaluation form. As I conclude, we are having another core learning space kicking off in November. So we are going to have the social production of habitat core learning space, which is going to be very exciting, very interesting in regards to the different regional experiences. So please make sure you have registered for the social production of habitat core learning space. We are going to send an email next week in regards to session 1, which will have a breakdown of the speakers and the topics to be talked about. So if you haven't registered, do not worry, there's still time. The first session will kick off on November 9th, which is a Thursday, the same time as this session. So we look forward to continuing this other conversation. And in regards to the climate justice agenda, we will also follow up with an email with this first document that compiles all these ideas that we've shared in order to invite you to advance this conversation to the next level. So with that, I want to officially close and to thank you again and to also thank our interpreters. But before we go, remember, we always make sure to take a class photo. Today's photo is special because we don't have another opportunity to do this under the climate justice conversation. So it's a bit emotional. So today you need to really give me your best smile, the one that you have been hiding over the sessions. So today you need to unleash that beautiful smile as we commemorate this moment where we officially closed the co-learning space, and that we are going to come back with this amazing action next time. So thank you very much. You've taken the photos. Thank you so much, members. See you soon. Hope to see you in the social production of habitats conversations next week but one. Thank you so much, and have a nice rest of your day or evening or afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. It has been a pleasure.
Great, great.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you and goodbye.